Welcome to the Heartbeat Chronicles, the podcast that delves into the intricate dynamic of love, sex, relationships, lifestyle, journaling, counseling and therapy, and the messy in between. Get ready to explore the various aspects of life's heartbeat and discover insightful conversations that resonate with you. In today's episode, we'll dive into unpopular opinions about family and explore the often taboo topic of cutting ties with family members. Discuss when, why, and how it's okay to step away from toxic family relationships, and provide insights and strategies for listeners who might be grappling with these difficult decisions. This episode aims to normalize the idea that sometimes walking away from family is the healthiest choice. Welcome to Heartbeat Chronicles, where every beat tells a story. I'm your host, Riley Mitchell, and for all you lovely soulful ambassadors tuning in for the first time, congratulations. You're now officially part of our heartfelt family. You know, I came across this quote the other day that really struck a chord with me. Sometimes you have to accept that certain things will never go back to how they used to be. Life goes on. Powerful stuff, right? It got me thinking about family, boundaries, and the tough decisions we sometimes have to make. Today, we're diving into a topic that's as heavy as my Aunt Mildred's fruitcake: unpopular opinions about family. I know, it sounds about as fun as a root canal, but stick with me, folks. We're going to navigate this emotional minefield together, and I promise we'll come out the other side with some valuable insights. Now, before you start thinking I've gone all doom and gloom on you, let me assure you that we're approaching this with the perfect blend of sensitivity and humor. Because let's face it, sometimes you've got to laugh to keep from crying, am I right? We'll be exploring the signs of toxic family dynamics. You know, those red flags that are waving so hard they could power a small wind farm. I'll be sharing some personal stories that'll make you laugh, cry, and maybe even cringe a little. Don't worry, names have been changed to protect the guilty. I mean, innocent. But we're not just here to commiserate. Oh no, my dear soulful ambassadors, we're also going to talk about how to move forward. Because life does go on, and sometimes it goes on a whole lot better when you've set some healthy boundaries. So, buckle up, Buttercup. We're about to embark on an emotional roller coaster ride that'll have more twists and turns than my family tree. Trust me, by the end of this episode, you'll be equipped with the wisdom of 1,000 therapy sessions and the humor of a stand-up comedian dealing with family drama. Remember, family ties are important, but so is your sanity. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to love them from a distance. A long, long distance, like maybe from another planet kind of distance. Now, let's dive into the deep end of the family pool, shall we? Don't worry, I've got my floaties on, and I promise to throw you a life preserver if things get too deep. So, take a deep breath, put on your emotional hazmat suit, and let's get ready to untangle some family knots. First up, we're going to talk about those sneaky signs of toxic family dynamics. You know, the ones that make you want to fake a sudden onset of amnesia every time there's a family gathering. We've all been there, right? One minute you're passing the mashed potatoes, the next you're questioning your entire existence. Let me tell you about my cousin Darla. Sweet as pie on the outside, but with a filling that's more bitter than a lemon soaked in vinegar. She's got this amazing talent for turning every conversation into a competition. Oh, you got a promotion, that's nice. I just became CEO of my own company. In my dreams. It's exhausting, folks. It's like being in a never-ending episode of Whose Life Is It Anyway? But it's not just the obvious stuff we need to watch out for. Sometimes it's the subtle things that really get under your skin. Like my Uncle Bob, who has a PhD in passive-aggressive comments. He's got this way of complimenting you that leaves you feeling like you've been insulted, but you can't quite put your finger on why. Wow, Riley, you're so brave to wear that outfit in public. Gee, thanks, Uncle Bob. I'll cherish that compliment forever. Now, I know what you're thinking. But Riley, they're family. Aren't we supposed to love them unconditionally? Well, my dear soulful ambassadors, love doesn't mean you have to be a human punching bag for emotional abuse. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to love yourself enough to say, thanks, but no thanks, to toxic relationships. But here's the kicker. Cutting ties with family isn't like unfriending someone on Facebook. It's more like trying to untangle a ball of Christmas lights that's been sitting in your attic for a decade. It's complicated, it's messy, and you might get a few shocks along the way. I remember when I finally decided to take a step back from my Aunt Mildred. Yes, the one with the killer fruitcake. It wasn't easy. I mean, who was going to force feed me desserts that could double as doorstops? But I realized that every interaction left me feeling drained, criticized, and about as valued as a parking ticket. The day I set that boundary was both terrifying and liberating. It felt like I was breaking some unwritten family code. But you know what? The world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. And most importantly, I didn't turn into a horrible person, despite what Aunt Mildred might tell you. So how do we move forward after making such a big decision? Well, first things first, give yourself permission to feel all the feels. Sadness, relief, guilt, joy. It's all part of the package deal. Embrace it like you're hugging a porcupine, carefully, but with conviction. Next, surround yourself with people who lift you up instead of dragging you down. Find your tribe, your chosen family. These are the people who love you for who you are, not for who they think you should be. And let me tell you, it's a game changer. Remember, setting boundaries doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you're a person who values their own well-being. And that, my friends, is something to celebrate. All right, folks, let's dive into the murky waters of family toxicity. Now, I know what you're thinking. Great, another cheery topic for my morning commute. But stick with me, because understanding this concept might just be the key to unlocking some of those family mysteries we've all been puzzling over. So, what exactly is family toxicity? Well, it's not your aunt's questionable casserole at the family reunion, I'll tell you that much. Family toxicity is more like a persistent cloud of negativity that hangs over your relationships with family members. It's the feeling that your interactions with certain relatives leave you feeling drained, stressed, or just plain icky. Picture this. You're at a family gathering, and instead of feeling warm and fuzzy, you're counting down the minutes until you can make your escape. That's not just holiday stress, my friends. That might be a sign of a toxic family dynamic. Now, I'm not saying every awkward family moment is toxic. We all have that one uncle who tells the same terrible jokes every year. That's just garden variety family weirdness. Family toxicity goes deeper. It's a pattern of behavior that consistently undermines your well-being, self-esteem, or personal growth. Here's the kicker. Toxic family dynamics often disguise themselves as normal. You might think, oh, that's just how mom is, or that's how we've always done things. But just because something's familiar doesn't mean it's healthy. It's like that pair of jeans you've had since college. Comfortable? Sure, but probably not doing you any favors. Understanding family toxicity is crucial because it can affect every aspect of your life. It's like a pebble in your shoe. It might seem small, but it can impact how you walk through the world. It can influence your relationships, your career choices, even how you parent your own kids. But here's the good news. Recognizing toxicity is the first step to dealing with it. It's like finally realizing that the reason you keep tripping is that your shoelaces are tied together. Once you see it, you can start to do something about it. Now, I'm not suggesting you need to cut ties with your entire family and move to a deserted island, though I'm sure we've all fantasized about that at some point. Understanding family toxicity is about gaining perspective, setting boundaries, and learning to protect your own well-being. So, as we continue this journey into the world of family toxicity, keep an open mind. You might recognize some of these patterns in your own family, or you might realize your family is actually pretty great. Either way, understanding these dynamics can help you navigate your relationships more effectively and maybe even bring a little more peace to those family gatherings. Remember, folks, knowledge is power. And in this case, it might also be the key to surviving your next family reunion without hiding in the bathroom. So buckle up, because we're about to get real about family dynamics. Trust me, it's going to be an eye-opening ride. All right, folks, let's dive into the murky waters of family manipulation. You know, that special brand of persuasion that makes you question your own sanity? Yeah, that's the one. It's like a magic trick, but instead of pulling rabbits out of hats, toxic family members pull guilt trips out of thin air. Let's start with the classic "I gave you life" maneuver. This is when a parent reminds you of your very existence as a bargaining chip. I carried you for 9 months. The least you could do is let me reorganize your entire life. Ah, yes, because apparently the uterus comes with a lifetime subscription to control your decisions. Then we have the "look what you made me do" tactic. This is when someone blames you for their actions or emotions. I wouldn't have to yell if you weren't so difficult. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize my existence was the root cause of your anger management issues. My bad. Don't forget the ever popular everyone else is doing it approach. This is when family members pressure you to conform by citing imaginary social norms. All good daughters call their mothers every day. Really? All of them? Even the ones in comas or on space missions. And let's not overlook the "I'm just trying to help" disguise. This is when criticism masquerades as concern. I'm only telling you you're a disappointment because I care about your future. Gee, thanks for the support. I feel so much better now. One particularly sneaky tactic is the selective memory ploy. This is when family members conveniently forget their own misdeeds while harping on yours. I've always been there for you. Sure, except for that time you forgot me at the grocery store for 6 hours in winter. Then there's the divide and conquer strategy. This is when manipulators pit family members against each other. Your sister would do this for me without complaining. Well, maybe we should ask her. Oh, wait, you told her I refused to do it already? How convenient. Let's not forget the moving goalposts game. This is when the expectations keep changing, making it impossible to win. You got straight A's? Well, why didn't you get involved in more extracurriculars? Sorry, I was too busy trying to achieve the impossible standards you set last week. And finally, we have the guilt by association tactic. This is when your actions are linked to unrelated consequences. If you move out, your father's blood pressure will skyrocket. I wasn't aware my zip code was directly connected to Dad's cardiovascular system. Recognizing these tactics is the first step in dealing with them. It's like developing a superpower, but instead of flying or invisibility, you get the ability to see through BS. And let's face it, in some families, that's a much more useful skill. Remember, manipulators thrive on your self-doubt and guilt. So the next time you feel that familiar twinge of, maybe I'm the problem, take a step back and ask yourself, is this legitimate concern, or is someone playing me like a fiddle? Because let's be honest, in a toxic family dynamic, you're not so much a loved one as you are a Stradivarius. All right, folks, let's dive into the murky waters of guilt tripping, the Olympic sport of toxic families everywhere. You know, if guilt tripping were an actual Olympic event, some families would be bringing home gold medals left and right. So, what exactly is guilt tripping? Well, it's like emotional blackmail's annoying little sister. It's when someone makes you feel guilty for something you shouldn't feel guilty about. It's the art of making you feel bad for living your life, having boundaries, or basically just existing. Picture this. You're about to go out with friends, and suddenly your mom says, "Oh, don't worry about me. I'll just sit here alone in the dark, wondering where I went wrong as a parent." Boom, guilt trip activated. You're now boarding the express train to Guiltville. Population, you. But why do people use guilt tripping? Simple, it's all about control. It's a manipulative tactic to get you to do what they want. It's like they have this invisible puppet string attached to your conscience, and they're pulling it like a deranged marionettist. Now, let's talk about some classic guilt tripping techniques. There's the "after all I've done for you" maneuver. This is when someone lists all the things they've ever done for you as if keeping a tally is what love is all about. I carried you for 9 months, and this is how you repay me? Newsflash. Giving birth doesn't entitle you to a lifetime of servitude. Then there's the "you're breaking my heart" routine. This is when someone acts like your personal choices are causing them physical pain. You're moving out? My poor heart can't take it. Last I checked, your life decisions shouldn't require a cardiologist's approval. Oh, and let's not forget the "everyone else is doing it" guilt trip. This is when they compare you to others to make you feel inadequate. Why can't you be more like your cousin? He calls his mother every day. Well, maybe Cousin Dearest doesn't have a mother who treats guilt like a food group. Now, why is guilt tripping so harmful? Well, it's like emotional termites, slowly eating away at your self-esteem and autonomy. It can make you second-guess your decisions, feel responsible for other people's happiness, and lead to a whole lot of unnecessary stress and anxiety. Guilt tripping can also create a cycle of resentment. The more someone tries to guilt you, the more you might start to resent them. And let's be honest, family gatherings are awkward enough without all that unspoken resentment floating around like a bad smell. So, how do we deal with guilt tripping? First, recognize it for what it is: manipulation. When you feel that twinge of guilt, ask yourself, is this really my responsibility, or is someone playing my emotions like a fiddle? Next, set boundaries. It's okay to say no, even to family. You're not responsible for managing other people's emotions. If they're upset because you won't do what they want, that's their problem, not yours. And finally, remember that you're entitled to live your life. You're not being selfish by having your own goals, dreams, and boundaries. You're being a healthy, functioning adult. And if someone can't handle that without resorting to guilt tripping, well, that says more about them than it does about you. So the next time someone tries to take you on a guilt trip, remember, you don't have to pack your bags and go. You can stay right where you are, guilt-free. After all, the only trip you should be taking is the one that leads to your own happiness and well-being. All right, let's talk about family support, or should I say, the mysterious case of the vanishing support system. You know, in a healthy family, support is like that favorite childhood blanket, always there when you need it. But in toxic families, it's more like a magician's disappearing act. Now you see it, now you don't. Picture this. You've just landed your dream job and you're bursting to share the news. You call home, expecting cheers and congratulations. Instead, you get a lukewarm, "That's nice, dear," followed by a lengthy monologue about Aunt Mildred's bunion surgery. Talk about a mood killer. Or how about when you're going through a tough breakup? In a supportive family, you'd get a shoulder to cry on and maybe some ice cream. In a toxic family, you might hear, "Well, what did you expect? You're not exactly a catch. Ouch." That's not just unsupportive, that's like throwing salt on the wound and then doing a little dance. But here's the thing, this lack of support isn't just annoying, it's actually harmful. It's like trying to grow a plant without water or sunlight. Sure, you might survive, but you're not going to thrive. When your family consistently fails to support you, it can seriously mess with your personal growth and self-esteem. Think about it. Every time you achieve something and it's met with indifference or criticism, it's like a little chip in your confidence. Over time, those chips add up, and before you know it, you're second-guessing every decision you make. Should I really apply for that promotion? Mom always says I'm not leadership material. Sound familiar? And let's not forget about the impact on your relationships outside the family. When you're used to your achievements being ignored or belittled, you might start to downplay them yourself. You become that person at parties who, when complimented, says, "Oh, it's nothing," and actually means it. Your toxic family has effectively trained you to be your own worst critic. But wait, there's more. The lack of support can also lead to some pretty messed up coping mechanisms. You might become an overachiever, constantly seeking the approval you never got at home. Or you might go the other way, giving up on your dreams because, well, what's the point if no one believes in you anyway? Now, I'm not saying all this to depress you. In fact, recognizing this pattern is the first step to breaking free from it. Once you realize that your family's lack of support is their issue, not yours, you can start building your own support system. Friends, mentors, therapists, there are people out there who will celebrate your wins and help you through your losses. Remember, just because your family's support has gone AWOL doesn't mean you don't deserve it. You do, and recognizing that fact. That's personal growth right there. So here's to you, taking steps to build the support system you deserve, even if it means looking outside your family tree. After all, who says family can't be chosen? Negativity, the unofficial family sport in some households. You know, the kind where everyone competes for the gold medal in doom and gloom. Welcome to the Olympic Games of Pessimism, where the glass isn't just half empty, it's probably cracked and leaking too. Let's dive into this cheerful topic, shall we? Imagine a family dinner where the main course is complaints, served with a side of criticism, and for dessert, a big ol' slice of why bother? Pie. Yum! But seriously, folks, consistent negativity in a family can be like a dark cloud that never seems to lift. It's like living in Seattle, but without the great coffee to make up for it. This persistent pessimism can seep into every corner of family life, turning what should be a supportive environment into a breeding ground for stress and anxiety. Picture this. Little Timmy comes home, excited about getting a B+ on his math test. In a healthy family, this might be cause for celebration, but in the kingdom of negativity, it's more like, why wasn't it an A? Your cousin Jimmy always gets A's. And just like that, Timmy's achievement deflates faster than a balloon at a porcupine's birthday party. Or how about family vacations? Most people look forward to these, right? Not in the house of eternal gloom. It's too hot, too cold, too expensive, too crowded. You name it. They'll complain about it. They could win an all-expenses-paid trip to paradise and still find a way to make it sound like a punishment. Oh, great. Now I have to buy sunscreen. But here's the kicker. This constant negativity isn't just annoying, it's downright toxic. It's like emotional pollution, and prolonged exposure can lead to some serious side effects. Family members might start to develop a pessimistic worldview, always expecting the worst. They might struggle with self-esteem issues, thinking, if my own family can't find anything good to say, maybe there isn't anything good about me. It can also create a cycle of negativity that's harder to break than your grandma's fruitcake. Family members learn to bond over shared complaints, turning griping into a twisted form of connection. I hate my job. Well, I hate my life. Aw, family hug. The real danger is when this negativity becomes so normal that it's invisible. It's like that weird smell in your fridge that you've gotten used to. You don't notice it anymore, but it's definitely affecting the taste of everything. So, how do we combat this festival of frowns? Well, recognizing it is the first step. If your family gatherings feel like a competition for who's having the worst time, you might be dealing with a negativity problem. Remember, it's okay to call out this behavior. In a constructive way, of course. You don't want to fight negativity with more negativity. That's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline, if the gasoline was also on fire. In the end, dealing with a constantly negative family environment is no joke, even if we can find humor in the situation. It's important to protect your own mental health and try to break the cycle. Who knows? Maybe you can be the one to bring a little sunshine into the house of gloom. Just don't expect anyone to thank you for it. That would be way too positive. All right, folks, we're about to venture into some heavy territory, so brace yourselves. We're talking about the dark underbelly of toxic families, emotional and physical abuse. Now, I know this isn't exactly a barrel of laughs, but it's crucial we tackle it head on. Let's start with emotional abuse, shall we? It's like the ninja of toxic family behaviors. Silent, sneaky, and leaves no visible scars. But boy, does it pack a punch. Imagine constantly being told you're not good enough, smart enough, or just plain enough. It's like having your own personal rain cloud following you around. Except instead of rain, it's pouring insults and put-downs. Some classic signs of emotional abuse include name-calling, constant criticism, and gaslighting. Gaslighting. The art of making you question your own sanity. It's like playing chess with someone who keeps moving the pieces when you're not looking, and then insists you're the one cheating. Then there's the silent treatment, the emotional equivalent of being sent to your room, except you're an adult and the room is the size of your entire life. It's amazing how the absence of words can speak volumes, isn't it? Now, onto physical abuse. This one's pretty straightforward. If someone's laying hands on you in anger, that's a big red flag. We're talking hitting, pushing, grabbing. Basically, any unwanted physical contact that leaves you feeling unsafe or hurt. It's like they missed the memo that hands are for high fives, not hitting. But here's the thing about both emotional and physical abuse. They often go hand in hand, like a toxic dynamic duo. And just like superheroes, they tend to have origin stories. Maybe the abuser was abused themselves, or perhaps they never learned healthy ways to express emotions. Not that this excuses their behavior, mind you. It's more like understanding the villain's backstory in a movie. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, but their family? Surely it can't be that bad. Well, let me tell you, the family card doesn't give anyone a free pass to treat you like yesterday's garbage. Blood may be thicker than water, but so is maple syrup, and you wouldn't let someone drown you in that, would you? If you're experiencing any form of abuse, it's crucial to reach out for help. I know. Easier said than done. It's like trying to escape quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. But trust me, there are people out there who can throw you a lifeline. There are hotlines, counselors, support groups. Heck, even that friend who's been giving you concerned looks lately. Don't be afraid to use them. It's not snitching, it's not being dramatic, and it's certainly not betraying your family. It's taking care of yourself. And last time I checked, that's not a crime. Remember, you deserve to feel safe, respected, and valued. If your family's not providing that, it might be time to redefine what family means to you. After all, sometimes the best families are the ones we choose for ourselves. So, if you're in a toxic or abusive situation, please don't suffer in silence. Reach out, speak up, and remember, you're not alone in this. There's a whole world out there ready to support you. No family membership required. All right, folks, it's time to put on our detective hats and connect the dots between toxic family dynamics and our mental health. Spoiler alert, it's not exactly a pretty picture, but hey, at least we're in this together, right? Let's start with the obvious. Growing up in a toxic family is like trying to grow a delicate flower in a garden full of weeds. It's challenging, to say the least. And just like those pesky weeds, toxic family dynamics can seriously stunt our emotional growth. Think about it. When you're constantly walking on eggshells around your family, your stress levels are through the roof. It's like living in a real-life haunted house, except instead of ghosts, you've got Uncle Bob's unpredictable temper and Aunt Susan's passive-aggressive comments. Talk about scary. This chronic stress can lead to a whole buffet of mental health issues. Anxiety, check. Depression, you bet. Low self-esteem, it's practically a given. It's like toxic families are handing out mental health issues like party favors at a really terrible birthday party. And let's not forget about the impact on our relationships outside the family. When you've been marinated in toxicity, it can be hard to recognize healthy relationships. You might find yourself attracted to people who treat you the same way your family does. It's like your brain is saying, hey, this feels familiar, let's do this. Spoiler alert, familiar doesn't always mean good. Then there's the joy of boundary issues. If your family never respected your boundaries, you might struggle to set them in other areas of your life. It's like trying to build a fence when you've never even seen one before. Good luck with that. Oh, and here's a fun one: decision making. When you've grown up in a toxic family, making decisions can feel as daunting as choosing between a root canal and a colonoscopy. Why? Because you've probably been second-guessing yourself your entire life, thanks to the constant criticism and lack of support. But wait, there's more. Toxic family dynamics can also lead to unhealthy coping mechanisms. Maybe you're a stress eater, or perhaps you've developed a close personal relationship with your local bartender. Either way, these coping mechanisms can create a whole new set of problems. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. It might feel good in the moment, but it's definitely not helping in the long run. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wow, this is depressing. But hold on to your hats, because here comes the plot twist. Recognizing these impacts is actually the first step towards healing. It's like finally diagnosing that weird rash you've had for years. Sure, it's not great news, but at least now you know what you're dealing with. Understanding how toxic family dynamics have affected you can be incredibly empowering. It's like having one of those movie montages where the main character suddenly understands everything. Cue the dramatic music and slow motion realization. And here's the really good news. Once you recognize these patterns, you can start to change them. It's not easy, and it definitely won't happen overnight, but it is possible. Think of it as reprogramming your internal software. Sure, your family might have installed some buggy programs, but you've got the power to update your system. This might involve therapy, highly recommended, setting boundaries, also highly recommended, or even limiting contact with toxic family members, sometimes necessary, always difficult. It's like spring cleaning for your mental health. It's a lot of work, but boy, does it feel good when you're done. Remember, your mental health and well-being are incredibly important. You wouldn't let someone repeatedly punch you in the face, so why let toxic family dynamics continue to punch your psyche? It's time to put on your emotional boxing gloves and fight back. So, there you have it, folks. The impact of toxic family dynamics on mental health and well-being. It's not pretty, but it's not the end of the story either. You've got the power to write your own happy ending, or at least a moderately content with occasional moments of joy ending. Let's be realistic here, people. All right, folks, we've been on quite the roller coaster ride through the wild world of toxic family dynamics. From manipulation masters to guilt trip gurus, we've seen it all. But remember, recognizing these patterns is the first step towards a healthier you. Take a moment to reflect on your own family experiences. Do any of these toxic traits sound familiar? If so, don't panic. You're not alone, and there's always hope for change. Remember, it's okay to prioritize your mental health and well-being. If you're struggling with toxic family dynamics, don't hesitate to reach out for support. Whether it's therapy, support groups, or just a heart-to-heart with a trusted friend, taking that first step can make all the difference. So, here's to healthier relationships, stronger boundaries, and a family dynamic that's less Addams Family and more Brady Bunch, or whatever works for you. Stay fabulous, and remember, you've got this. It's hard to imagine the people you trust the most turning their backs on you when you need them most. But that's exactly what happened to my mom. I'll never forget the day she lost her job. It wasn't just a job she lost, it was her sense of security, her confidence, and sadly, her parents' support. My mom had always been there for her family, but when she needed them, they weren't just absent. They were cruel. The emotional abuse started almost immediately. Harsh words, constant criticism, and a complete lack of empathy. It was as if they saw her vulnerability as an opportunity to tear her down rather than build her up. I was just a sophomore in college at the time, and my baby sister was barely a year old. We were all struggling, but watching my mom endure this betrayal was heartbreaking. The people who were supposed to be her rock became the very ones who made her feel worthless. The impact on our family was profound. We felt isolated, abandoned, and deeply hurt. It shook our faith in family bonds and forced us to redefine what family truly means. But in that darkness, we found strength in each other. We learned that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. The hardships we faced during that time were truly overwhelming. It's hard to put into words the pain of being ridiculed and mistreated by your own family. I remember vividly how we were treated as if our opinions didn't matter, as if we were nothing. The way they spoke to us was worse than how they treated their workers. One instance that stands out was when we were offered food that had gone bad. I couldn't believe it. I mean, who does that to their own flesh and blood? It made me question if these people were really my mom's parents. Aren't grandparents supposed to shower their grandchildren with love and affection? The emotional toll was immense. I can still see my mom crying after the insults were hurled at her. I felt so helpless in those moments. Being young, I couldn't speak up, so I would just sit with her, trying to console her while fighting back my own tears. It was heartbreaking to see her so broken, especially knowing all she had done for them in the past. The constant negativity and lack of support created a toxic environment that was almost suffocating. It felt like we were trapped in a cycle of emotional abuse with no way out. Every day was a struggle, filled with uncertainty and fear of what new insult or mistreatment awaited us. Despite all the challenges we faced, we didn't give up. Our story is one of perseverance and hope. When we finally made the decision to move to the city, it felt like a breath of fresh air. It was our chance to start anew, away from the constant negativity and emotional abuse. The transition wasn't easy, but we were determined to make it work. My mom, with her incredible strength, found a new job. I focused on my studies, pushing myself harder than ever before. We were fueled by a desire to prove our worth, not just to others, but to ourselves. As we settled into our new life, we made a crucial decision for our mental health. We cut off all contact with the toxic family members for 2 whole years. It was a difficult choice, but it gave us the space we needed to heal and grow. During this time, we learned the importance of setting and maintaining boundaries. We realized that sometimes the people who are supposed to love us the most can be the ones who hurt us the deepest. But we also learned that we have the power to choose who we allow in our lives. Slowly but surely, we began to thrive. I graduated with flying colors, just as I had promised myself I would. My mom's career took off, and we found ourselves in a much better place, both financially and emotionally. Looking back, I can see how far we've come. We're no longer dependent on those who once belittled us. We've built a life we're proud of, filled with positivity and mutual support. Our journey taught us that with determination and the courage to make tough decisions, it's possible to overcome even the most challenging family situations and create a brighter future. You know, family dynamics can be incredibly complex, and sometimes the people we expect to support us the most can become our biggest source of pain. That's exactly what happened with my uncle, my mom's brother. It's a story that really illustrates how sibling rivalry and jealousy can poison family relationships. My uncle was always the type who needed to be on top, to be seen as the most successful. But instead of working on his own growth, he seemed fixated on tearing my mom down. It was heartbreaking to watch. He'd go behind our backs, whispering negative things about my mom to my grandparents or anyone who would listen. It was like he couldn't bear to see her succeed or be happy. This jealousy created a toxic environment that affected our entire family. Every gathering became a minefield of passive-aggressive comments and underhanded jabs. You could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. It got to the point where we dreaded family events, knowing that my uncle would find some way to belittle my mom's achievements or twist her words. The saddest part is that this behavior didn't just hurt my mom. It rippled out, affecting relationships between cousins, aunts, and uncles. It created divisions where there should have been unity. And for what? All because one person couldn't find joy in another's success. This experience taught me how destructive unchecked jealousy can be in a family. It's a reminder that we need to actively work on celebrating each other's victories, big and small, instead of letting envy eat away at our relationships. Now, let me share a story from my paternal grandmother's life that illustrates how cultural expectations can tear families apart. In my tribe, the Luo community, There was a tradition that when a woman became a widow, she was expected to marry her late husband's brother. It's hard to imagine in today's world, but this was the reality my grandmother faced. After my grandfather passed away, my grandmother found herself in an impossible situation. She was educated, a devout Christian, and had no desire to remarry, especially not to her brother-in-law. But her refusal to follow this age-old custom came at a steep price. Her in-laws, outraged by her decision, sent her away. Just like that, she was cut off from the family she had been a part of for years. Left alone with 6 children to raise, my grandmother's strength was put to the test. Thankfully, she had a job in the city that allowed her to support her family. But the emotional toll of this abandonment left deep scars, not just on her, but on her children as well. My uncle, in particular, has never been able to forgive that side of the family. The hurt and resentment have stayed with him all these years. He often says, "Why would we reconcile with the people who mistreated and abandoned our mother?" It's a sentiment that speaks volumes about the lasting impact of these cultural conflicts. Healing from toxic family relationships is a journey, and for us, it began with setting clear boundaries. When we moved to the city, we made the difficult decision to cut off all contact with my mother's parents for 2 years. It was a necessary step to protect our mental health and start fresh. During this time, we focused on healing ourselves and rebuilding our lives. We learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or allowing the same patterns to continue. It's about letting go of the anger and resentment for our own sake. As time passed, we cautiously reopened communication. The relationship will never be the same, and that's okay. We've learned to keep a healthy distance while still maintaining some form of connection. The impact of these experiences has been profound. We've become more resilient, more appreciative of genuine relationships, and more aware of the importance of emotional support. It's taught us to be selective about who we allow into our inner circle and to prioritize our well-being. These experiences have also shaped how we approach our own family dynamics now. We're more conscious of open communication, mutual respect, and the need to address issues head-on rather than letting them fester. Moving forward doesn't mean erasing the past. It means learning from it, growing stronger, and creating a better future for ourselves and the next generation. As we come to the end of this deeply personal journey, I want to leave you with some key takeaways. Family relationships can be incredibly complex and, at times, painful, but remember, you're not alone in these struggles. The most important lesson I've learned is that it's okay to set boundaries, even with family. Your mental health and well-being should always come first. Forgiveness is powerful, but it doesn't mean you have to allow toxic behavior back into your life. To those of you facing similar challenges, stay strong. Your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, even if they're family. Healing is possible, and you have the power to create a life filled with love and positivity, regardless of your family history. Recognizing these signs is truly the first step on the path to creating healthy boundaries and making the difficult decision to distance yourself from toxic family relationships. By acknowledging these red flags, you're empowering yourself to take control of your emotional well-being and prioritize your mental health. To all our soulful ambassadors out there, we want to hear your stories. Your experiences matter, and sharing them can help others who might be struggling with similar situations. If you've dealt with toxic family relationships or have encountered any of the signs we've mentioned, we encourage you to reach out and share your journey with us. Whether it's through our direct messages in the comment section below or via email, your story could be the beacon of hope someone else needs right now. By opening up about your experiences, you're not only healing yourself, but potentially helping others find the strength to recognize toxic patterns in their own lives. Remember, you're not alone in this. Our community is here to support you, listen without judgment, and provide a safe space for you to express yourself. Your bravery in sharing could be the catalyst for someone else's healing journey. So don't hesitate to connect with us and let your voice be heard. Together, we can break the cycle of toxic family dynamics and foster a community of understanding, growth, and positive change. Let's talk about unpopular opinions about family. Now, I know what you're thinking. Family is sacred, right? Well, today we're going to challenge that notion and explore some controversial perspectives on family dynamics that might make you uncomfortable, but could also open your eyes to new ways of thinking. We all grow up with certain beliefs about family that blood is thicker than water, that family always comes first, and that we should unconditionally love and support our relatives. But what if I told you that these ideas aren't always true or healthy for everyone? In the next hour, we're going to question some deeply ingrained societal norms about family relationships. We'll discuss topics that might feel a bit taboo, like the fact that parents don't always know best, or that it's okay to prioritize friendships over family ties. This isn't about bashing family or encouraging people to cut ties with their loved ones. Instead, it's about recognizing that family dynamics are complex and often imperfect. By acknowledging these realities, we can foster healthier relationships and set better boundaries. So buckle up and prepare to challenge your preconceptions. Whether you agree with everything I say or not, I hope this discussion will encourage you to reflect on your own family dynamics and perhaps see them in a new light. Let's dive into a topic that might make some people uncomfortable. The idea that unconditional love in families isn't always healthy. We're often taught from a young age that we should love our family members no matter what. But is this really the best approach? Think about it for a moment. If someone consistently hurts you, disrespects you, or undermines your well-being, should you continue to love them unconditionally just because they're family? The truth is, this expectation can be incredibly damaging, especially in cases of abuse or toxic relationships. Consider a child growing up with a parent who is emotionally manipulative or verbally abusive. Society often pressures this child to maintain a relationship with the parent, even into adulthood, because they're still your mother or father. But at what cost? Continuing to subject yourself to harmful behavior can lead to long-lasting emotional scars and mental health issues. It's important to recognize that love should be based on mutual respect, care, and support. When these elements are consistently missing from a family relationship, it's okay to reassess and potentially distance yourself. This doesn't mean you don't care about the person, but rather that you care about yourself enough to set boundaries. Some might argue that family should always come first, no matter what. But this mentality can enable toxic behavior and keep people trapped in unhealthy cycles. It's crucial to understand that you have the right to prioritize your own well-being, even if that means stepping back from certain family relationships. This doesn't mean you should cut ties at the first sign of conflict. Family relationships, like all relationships, require work and communication. However, if you've consistently tried to address issues and set boundaries to no avail, it's okay to consider more drastic measures. Remember, distancing yourself from harmful family members isn't about punishment or revenge. It's about self-preservation and creating a healthier environment for yourself. It's about recognizing that you deserve relationships that uplift and support you, not tear you down. In the end, the most important relationship you have is with yourself. By setting boundaries and, if necessary, distancing yourself from toxic family members, you're not being selfish. You're practicing self-care and self-respect. And that's something we should all strive for, regardless of family ties. Let's talk about cutting ties with family members. Society has conditioned us to believe that family is everything, and that severing those connections is somehow a failure or a sign of weakness. But today, I want to challenge that notion and explain why cutting ties can sometimes be the bravest and most necessary decision you'll ever make. When we hear about someone distancing themselves from their family, our first reaction might be shock or judgment. We might think, how could they do that to their own flesh and blood? But the truth is, we don't always know what's going on behind closed doors. Family relationships can be complex, and sometimes they can be downright toxic. Imagine growing up in a household where emotional abuse is the norm, where your achievements are belittled, your dreams are mocked, and your self-esteem is constantly under attack. Now imagine carrying that weight into adulthood, trying to build a life while still being dragged down by those same harmful dynamics. In situations like these, cutting ties isn't just an option, it's a lifeline. It's important to understand that cutting ties doesn't always mean a dramatic, permanent exit. Sometimes it's about creating distance, setting firm boundaries, or limiting contact. The goal is to protect your mental health and create space for personal growth. But let's be real, even when it's necessary, cutting ties with family is never easy. There's often a deep sense of guilt, a fear of judgment from others, and the pain of losing connections that have been a part of your life for so long. It's a decision that comes with grief, doubt, and often a lot of second guessing. However, it's crucial to remember that you have the right to prioritize your own well-being. You're not responsible for maintaining relationships that continually harm you, even if those relationships are with family members. Your mental health, your happiness, and your ability to grow as a person are important. Sometimes protecting these things means making the difficult decision to step away from toxic family dynamics. If you're considering cutting ties with a family member, remember that it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean you're weak or that you failed. On the contrary, it takes immense strength to recognize when a relationship is harmful and to take steps to protect yourself. It's an act of self-love and self-preservation. Let's talk about a phrase we've all heard. Blood is thicker than water. It's a saying that's been passed down through generations, implying that family ties are the strongest and most important connections we can have. But is that always true? The reality is, sometimes our closest and most supportive relationships aren't with our blood relatives at all. They're with friends, mentors, or even chosen family members who have no biological connection to us. Think about it. How many times have you turned to a friend for advice or support when you couldn't talk to your family? Or maybe you have a mentor who believes in you more than your parents ever did. These bonds can be incredibly powerful and meaningful. The truth is, trust, understanding, and mutual respect aren't guaranteed just because you share DNA with someone. These qualities are built over time through shared experiences, open communication, and genuine care for one another's well-being. Consider a scenario where you're going through a tough time. Your family might tell you to toughen up or get over it, while your best friend listens without judgment and offers genuine support. In that moment, who feels more like family? It's also worth noting that family dynamics can be complex and sometimes toxic. If you've grown up in an environment where your opinions were dismissed, your feelings invalidated, or worse, you might find more authentic connections outside your biological family. This isn't to say that all family relationships are negative, far from it. Many people have wonderful, supportive families, but it's important to recognize that if you don't, that's okay too. You're not alone, and you're not wrong for feeling closer to non-family members. Redefining family means acknowledging that the strength of a relationship isn't determined by blood, but by the quality of the connection. It's about recognizing that family can be chosen, and that these chosen bonds can be just as strong, if not stronger, than biological ones. So the next time someone tells you blood is thicker than water, remember that it's okay to challenge that notion. Your family is who you choose it to be. It's the people who support you, understand you, and accept you for who you are, regardless of whether you share DNA. Let's talk about forgiveness in family relationships. We've all heard the saying, forgive and forget, especially when it comes to family. But is forgiveness always necessary or even beneficial? Today, we're going to challenge this widely held belief. Forgiveness is often portrayed as a virtue, a sign of strength and maturity. We're told that forgiving family members, no matter what they've done, is the key to healing and moving forward. But this perspective doesn't always hold up in real-life situations. Consider a scenario where a family member has repeatedly betrayed your trust, caused you emotional pain, or even subjected you to abuse. They've never acknowledged their actions, shown genuine remorse, or made any effort to change their behavior. In such cases, the idea of mandatory forgiveness can be not just unhelpful, but potentially harmful. Forgiveness, when not earned or warranted, can enable harmful behavior to continue. It can send the message that actions don't have consequences, potentially perpetuating a cycle of hurt. Moreover, forcing yourself to forgive when you're not ready can lead to suppressed emotions and unresolved trauma. It's important to recognize that healing doesn't always require forgiveness. Sometimes, what we really need is acceptance. Accepting that what happened was wrong, that it wasn't our fault, and that we have the right to protect ourselves from further harm. This doesn't mean holding on to anger or resentment. It's about acknowledging your feelings, processing them in a healthy way, and making decisions that prioritize your well-being. Sometimes that might mean choosing not to forgive, at least not right away. Remember, forgiveness is a personal choice and a process. It's not something that can or should be forced, even when family is involved. If a family member has hurt you deeply and hasn't made amends, you're not obligated to offer them forgiveness simply because you're related. Instead of focusing on forgiveness, it might be more beneficial to concentrate on setting boundaries, seeking support, and working on your own healing. These steps can lead to peace and personal growth, with or without forgiveness. In the end, it's okay to say, I'm not ready to forgive, or even, I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive this. That doesn't make you a bad person or a bad family member. It makes you someone who values their own well-being and understands that some actions have lasting consequences. So the next time someone tells you that you must forgive a family member, remember, forgiveness is a gift, not an obligation. And sometimes the person most deserving of that gift is yourself. I want to share a personal experience that illustrates this complexity. In my family, as I mentioned earlier on, we faced a situation where my uncle and grandparents caused significant harm to my mother and me. The pain they inflicted was deep and lasting, leaving emotional scars that took 2 years to heal. After much soul-searching and internal struggle, my mother and I made the decision to forgive them. However, I want to be clear. This forgiveness wasn't about excusing their actions or pretending the hurt never happened. It was a choice we made for ourselves, to release the heavy burden of resentment we had been carrying. We realized that holding on to that anger and pain was only hurting us further. By choosing to forgive, we were able to find a sense of peace and move forward with our lives. It's important to note that this forgiveness didn't necessarily mean rekindling close relationships with those who hurt us. It was more about finding inner peace and letting go of the negative emotions that were holding us back. On the flip side, my uncle, my dad's brother, took a different approach when it came to forgiving our granddad's relatives. He chose not to forgive them for their actions, and you know what? That was okay too. His decision was valid and deserved respect, just as our decision to forgive did. This contrast within our family highlights an important point. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to forgiveness. What works for one person may not work for another, and that's perfectly fine. The key is to make the choice that best supports your own emotional well-being and personal growth. These experiences taught me that forgiveness is a deeply personal journey. It's not something that should be forced or expected, especially when it comes to family. Sometimes choosing not to forgive can be just as powerful and healing as choosing to forgive. The most important thing is to make the decision that feels right for you, regardless of societal expectations or family pressure. Let's talk about chosen family, a concept that's becoming increasingly important in our modern world. We've all heard the saying, you can't choose your family, but what if I told you that in many ways you actually can? Chosen family refers to the people in our lives who we've consciously selected to play significant roles. These are the friends who've become more like siblings, the mentors who've guided us like parents, or even the in-laws who've welcomed us with open arms. They're the people who support us, understand us, and accept us for who we are, sometimes more than our biological relatives do. Now, I know what you might be thinking. But isn't prioritizing these relationships over my biological family disloyal or wrong? The short answer is absolutely not. Here's why. First, it's important to recognize that the quality of relationships matters more than the nature of the connection. Just because someone shares your DNA doesn't automatically make them the best support system for you. Sometimes, the people we choose to surround ourselves with can provide more love, understanding, and encouragement than those we're related to by blood. Think about it. Your best friend who's always there to listen when you're going through a tough time, or that coworker who became a mentor and helped shape your career. These relationships are built on mutual respect, shared experiences, and genuine care, not obligation or societal expectations. Moreover, chosen family members often have a unique advantage. They're in your life because they want to be, not because they have to be. This voluntary connection can lead to deeper, more authentic relationships. It's also worth noting that for many people, especially those in the LGBTQ+ community or individuals who've experienced family rejection, chosen family isn't just a preference. It's a lifeline. These self-created support networks can provide the acceptance and love that might be lacking in biological family relationships. Now, this doesn't mean you should completely discard your biological family if those relationships are positive and nurturing. The idea is to recognize that it's okay to prioritize the relationships that truly support and uplift you, regardless of whether those people are related to you by blood. Remember, family isn't just about who you're related to. It's about who shows up for you, who accepts you unconditionally, and who makes you feel at home. If those people happen to be friends, mentors, or other non-relatives, that's perfectly valid. So I encourage you to reflect on your own life. Who are the people who truly support and understand you? Who makes you feel valued and accepted? These are your chosen family members, and it's more than okay to prioritize these relationships. After all, at the end of the day, what matters most is surrounding yourself with people who bring positivity, growth, and love into your life. Let's talk about a topic that many of us struggle with, but often hesitate to discuss openly: recognizing and dealing with toxic family members. It's a difficult subject because we're taught from a young age that family is everything. But what happens when that family dynamic becomes harmful? Toxic behavior in family members can take many forms. It might be constant criticism, emotional manipulation, or even more overt forms of abuse. The key is learning to identify these patterns. Does a certain family member always leave you feeling drained or upset after interactions? Do they constantly belittle your achievements or undermine your confidence? These could be signs of toxic behavior. One common toxic trait is gaslighting, where a family member denies your reality or makes you question your own memories and perceptions. Another is guilt tripping, where they use your sense of family obligation to manipulate you into doing what they want. It's important to remember that just because someone is family doesn't mean their behavior is acceptable. You have the right to protect yourself from harmful relationships, even if those relationships are with people who share your DNA. So, how do you deal with toxic family members? The first step is acknowledging the problem. It can be painful to admit that a family member's behavior is harmful, but it's a crucial step towards protecting your mental health. Next, set clear boundaries. This might mean limiting contact, refusing to engage in certain topics of conversation, or being firm about what behavior you will and won't tolerate. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's a necessary act of self-care. In some cases, you might need to consider limiting contact more severely or even cutting ties completely. This is a deeply personal decision and not one to be taken lightly. But if a family member's behavior is causing significant harm to your mental health or well-being, it's an option you should feel empowered to consider. It's also important to seek support. This could be from friends, other family members who understand your situation, or a professional therapist. Having a support system can make a huge difference when dealing with toxic family dynamics. Remember, protecting yourself from toxic behavior doesn't make you a bad person or a bad family member. It makes you someone who values their own well-being and understands that healthy relationships, even family ones, should be built on mutual respect and care. Let's talk about a controversial topic that many of us struggle with: the idea that we owe our family something just because they raised us. It's a deeply ingrained belief in many cultures, but it's one that can lead to some pretty unhealthy dynamics. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you heard someone say, "But they're your parents, you have to take care of them," or "After all they've done for you, this is how you repay them"? These statements reflect a common belief that children are indebted to their parents simply for being raised. But here's the thing: none of us asked to be born. Our parents made the choice to bring us into this world, and with that choice comes the responsibility to care for and raise their children. That's not something children should feel eternally indebted for. It's the basic expectation of parenthood. Now, don't get me wrong. Gratitude is important, and it's natural to feel thankful for the sacrifices our parents made. But there's a big difference between feeling grateful and feeling obligated to the point where it negatively impacts your life. Let's consider an example. Imagine you've just landed your dream job in another city, but your parents expect you to turn it down because they want you to stay close to home and help them with various tasks. They might say things like, "After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us." This kind of guilt tripping can make you feel trapped and resentful. The truth is, you don't owe your parents your entire future just because they raised you. You have the right to live your own life, make your own choices, and pursue your own happiness. This doesn't mean you don't love or care for your family. It simply means you're establishing healthy boundaries. Another common scenario is when parents expect their adult children to support them financially, even if it puts the child's own financial future at risk. While helping family in times of genuine need is admirable, feeling obligated to continually support parents who make poor financial decisions isn't healthy. Breaking free from these obligations isn't easy. It often comes with a hefty dose of guilt and potentially conflict with family members. But remember, setting boundaries and prioritizing your own well-being doesn't make you a bad person or an ungrateful child. It makes you a healthy adult who's capable of making their own decisions. It's also worth noting that this mindset of obligation can extend beyond parents to other family members too. You might feel pressured to loan money to a sibling or to spend all your free time helping an aunt or uncle, all because that's what family does. But healthy family relationships are built on mutual respect, understanding, and support, not on obligation and guilt. It's okay to help your family when you can and want to, but it's also okay to say no when it doesn't align with your own needs or values. Setting boundaries with family members is often seen as a challenging and uncomfortable task. Many of us struggle with feelings of guilt or worry that we're being disrespectful when we try to establish limits. However, it's crucial to understand that setting boundaries is not only healthy, but necessary for maintaining positive relationships and protecting our own well-being. Let's start by acknowledging that family dynamics can be complex. We often have deep-rooted patterns of behavior and expectations that have been established over years or even generations. Breaking these patterns by setting boundaries can feel like rocking the boat, but it's important to remember that healthy relationships require mutual respect and understanding. So, how can we set boundaries without feeling guilty? First, recognize that setting boundaries is an act of self-care, not selfishness. By clearly communicating your needs and limits, you're actually contributing to a healthier family dynamic. You're teaching others how to treat you and modeling self-respect. It's also helpful to approach boundary setting with empathy and clarity. Instead of making accusations or placing blame, focus on expressing your own feelings and needs. For example, instead of saying, "You're always barging into my room without knocking," try, "I feel uncomfortable when people enter my room without knocking." In the future, "Could you please knock and wait for me to respond before coming in?" Remember, you're not responsible for managing other people's reactions to your boundaries. They might initially feel hurt or confused, but that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Give them time to adjust and stay firm in your resolve. It's also important to start small. You don't need to overhaul all your family relationships overnight. Begin with one boundary that feels manageable and gradually work your way up to more challenging ones. If you still struggle with guilt, try to reframe your thinking. Instead of viewing boundaries as a way of pushing people away, see them as a means of creating healthier, more sustainable relationships. By setting boundaries, you're actually investing in the long-term health of your family connections. Lastly, remember that it's okay to seek support. Whether it's from a therapist, a support group, or trusted friends, having a network of people who understand and encourage your boundary-setting efforts can be invaluable. Setting boundaries with family isn't always easy, but it's a vital skill for maintaining your mental health and fostering respectful relationships. With practice and patience, you can learn to set boundaries without guilt, leading to more fulfilling and balanced family dynamics. Let's talk about a concept that might seem counterintuitive at first: loving family members from a distance. We often hear that love requires constant presence and interaction, but that's not always the case, especially when it comes to complex family dynamics. Sometimes maintaining close contact with certain family members can be harmful or draining to your mental health. This doesn't mean you don't love them. It simply means you need to find a different way to express that love while protecting your own well-being. Consider a situation where you have a parent who's overly critical or manipulative. Being around them constantly might lead to stress, anxiety, or self-doubt. In such cases, creating some physical and emotional distance can actually be the healthiest choice for both parties. Loving from a distance might involve limiting in-person visits, reducing phone calls, or setting clear boundaries on topics of conversation. It's about finding a balance that allows you to maintain a connection without sacrificing your mental health. This approach can be particularly helpful when dealing with family members who struggle with addiction or mental health issues. By loving them from afar, you're able to offer support without enabling harmful behaviors or becoming entangled in their struggles. Remember, loving from a distance doesn't mean cutting off all contact. It's about adjusting the nature and frequency of your interactions to a level that feels safe and comfortable for you. This might mean sending occasional text messages, writing letters, or having brief phone calls instead of lengthy visits. It's also important to recognize that this distance can sometimes lead to personal growth for both parties. It gives you space to heal, reflect, and develop a stronger sense of self. For the family member, it might encourage them to reflect on their behavior and potentially make positive changes. Loving from a distance requires strength and self-awareness. It's about acknowledging that you can care deeply for someone while also prioritizing your own well-being. It's not selfish, it's self-preservation. So, if you find yourself in a situation where close contact with a family member is causing you harm, consider the possibility of loving them from a distance. It might just be the key to maintaining a relationship while protecting your mental health. When we think about family, we often picture the traditional model: parents, siblings, grandparents, and so on. But what if I told you that family doesn't have to be defined solely by blood relations? It's time to challenge our preconceptions and embrace a more inclusive definition of what family truly means. Family, at its core, is about love, support, and a sense of belonging. These qualities aren't exclusive to biological relationships. In fact, sometimes the people who fulfill these roles best in our lives aren't related to us at all. Consider your closest friends, those who've stood by you through thick and thin, or maybe a mentor who's guided you and believed in you when others didn't. These individuals might feel more like family than some of your blood relatives. And guess what? That's perfectly okay. Redefining family on your own terms means recognizing and valuing these connections for what they are: It's about creating a support system that truly nourishes your soul and helps you grow as a person. This doesn't mean you have to abandon your biological family completely. It's about expanding your concept of family to include those who genuinely care for you and have your best interests at heart. Think about the people in your life who make you feel safe, understood, and accepted. Those who celebrate your successes and support you through your struggles. These are the qualities that define a true family, regardless of DNA. By broadening your definition of family, you open yourself up to deeper, more meaningful connections. You create a chosen family that complements or even supplements your biological one. Remember, you have the power to decide who you consider family. It's not about replacing your biological family, but about recognizing that family can come in many forms. It's about quality of relationships, not just shared genetics. So I encourage you to reflect on your relationships. Who makes you feel at home? Who do you turn to in times of need? Who accepts you unconditionally? These people, whether related by blood or not, are your family. Embrace this more inclusive concept of family. Allow yourself to nurture and prioritize these meaningful relationships. Because at the end of the day, family is about love, support, and belonging, and you have the right to find and cherish that wherever it exists in your life. Let's talk about a controversial topic. Parents don't always know best. Now, I know this might ruffle some feathers, but hear me out. We often put our parents on a pedestal, believing they have all the answers. But the truth is, they're human too, and sometimes their advice can be misguided or even harmful. Take, for example, the classic parental push for their child to become a doctor or lawyer. While these are respectable professions, they might not align with a child's passions or aptitudes. I knew someone whose parents insisted she pursue medicine despite her love for art. She spent years in pre-med, struggling and unhappy, before finally switching to graphic design. Now she's thriving in a career she loves. Another instance where parental guidance can be detrimental is in relationships. Parents might disapprove of a partner based on outdated prejudices or their own fears, potentially sabotaging a healthy relationship. Or they might encourage staying in a toxic relationship for the sake of appearance or tradition. Financial advice is another area where parents can steer us wrong. They might discourage risk-taking or entrepreneurship, favoring the security of a traditional 9-to-5 job. But in today's rapidly changing job market, that advice could limit opportunities for growth and success. It's also worth noting that parents' advice often comes from a place of love and protection. But sometimes that desire to protect can hold us back from valuable life experiences. They might discourage travel, moving to a new city, or taking a gap year fearing the unknown. But these experiences can be incredibly formative and enriching. The key is to remember that while our parents' opinions are valuable, they shouldn't be the only factor in our decision-making. It's crucial to think critically, seek diverse perspectives, and ultimately trust our own instincts. After all, we're the ones who have to live with the consequences of our choices, not our parents. Family traditions can be a beautiful way to connect with our roots and create lasting memories. But what happens when these traditions no longer align with our values or lifestyle? It's a topic that many of us grapple with, yet rarely discuss openly. Let's face it, just because something has been done for generations doesn't mean it's right for you. Maybe your family has always celebrated holidays in a certain way, but it leaves you feeling drained rather than festive. Or perhaps there's a cultural expectation that you'll follow a particular career path, even though your passions lie elsewhere. Breaking away from these traditions can feel like betrayal, but it's important to remember that you're not rejecting your family, you're simply choosing what works best for you. It's about authenticity and living a life that feels true to who you are. Take Sarah, for example. Her family had a tradition of extravagant gift-giving during the holidays. As she grew older, she realized this tradition conflicted with her values of minimalism and environmental consciousness. Instead of continuing this practice, she suggested her family donate to charities in each other's names. It was met with resistance at first, but eventually became a new, meaningful tradition for the whole family. Creating your own practices doesn't mean completely abandoning your family's traditions. It's about finding a balance between honoring your heritage and forging your own path. Maybe you keep some traditions and modify others. Or perhaps you create entirely new ones that better reflect your current life and values. Remember, traditions are meant to bring joy and meaning to our lives. If they're causing stress or resentment, it's okay to let them go. Your family might not understand at first, but with open communication and time, they may come to respect your choices. After all, isn't the most important family tradition simply being there for each other? Sibling rivalry isn't just a childhood phase that magically disappears once we grow up. In fact, it can persist well into adulthood, shaping our relationships and dynamics for years to come. While we often hear stories of siblings becoming best friends as they mature, the reality is that many continue to struggle with competition, jealousy, and unresolved issues from their younger years. Take, for example, the case of Sarah and her older brother, Tom. Growing up, Tom was always the star athlete, receiving praise and attention from their parents and community. Sarah, on the other hand, excelled in academics, but felt her achievements were overshadowed. Now in their 30s, this dynamic continues to play out in family gatherings, with Tom dominating conversations about his latest career successes, while Sarah feels overlooked and resentful. It's crucial to recognize that not all sibling relationships will improve with time. Sometimes, the healthiest approach is to acknowledge that certain dynamics may never change. This doesn't mean giving up entirely, but rather adjusting our expectations and setting appropriate boundaries. Consider Mark and his younger sister, Lisa. They've been at odds since childhood, with different personalities and life choices leading to constant conflict. Despite years of family therapy and attempts at reconciliation, their relationship remains strained. Mark has come to accept that while he and Lisa may never be close, they can maintain a cordial relationship during family events without expecting more. Accepting the reality of ongoing sibling rivalry can be liberating. It allows us to focus on nurturing the relationships that do bring positivity into our lives, whether that's with other family members or close friends. Remember, it's okay to have different levels of closeness with different siblings, and it's not a reflection of your worth as a person or family member. Let's talk about a common belief that often goes unchallenged: the idea that having a child will automatically bring a family closer together. While it's true that the arrival of a new baby can be a joyous occasion, it's not always the magical fix for family issues that some people expect it to be. In reality, having a child can introduce new stresses and challenges to family relationships. The sleepless nights, financial pressures, and the sheer responsibility of caring for a new life can take a toll on even the strongest families. For example, consider a couple who's been experiencing communication issues. They might think that having a baby will give them a common focus and bring them closer. However, the added stress of parenting could actually exacerbate their existing problems. They might find themselves arguing more about parenting styles, division of responsibilities, or financial decisions related to the child. Or think about a situation where there's already tension between in-laws. A new grandchild might temporarily create a sense of unity, but it can also lead to new conflicts. Grandparents might have different ideas about childcare, or there might be disagreements about how much time they should spend with the baby. It's also worth noting that having a child can sometimes highlight differences in values or priorities that weren't apparent before. One partner might want to continue focusing on their career, while the other expects them to take on a more traditional parenting role. These differing expectations can create new rifts in the relationship. None of this is to say that having a child can't bring joy and closeness to a family. It absolutely can, but it's important to recognize that it's not an automatic fix for existing issues. A strong family unit requires ongoing work, communication, and mutual respect, with or without children in the picture. When it comes to family, there's often an expectation of complete transparency. We're told that family should know everything about our lives, but is that really necessary or even healthy? Let's talk about why maintaining some privacy within family relationships can actually be a good thing. First off, it's important to recognize that you're an individual with your own life, separate from your family. You're not obligated to share every detail of your personal life, career, or relationships with them. This doesn't mean you're being secretive or dishonest. It's about setting healthy boundaries. Sometimes family members can be judgmental or have strong opinions about our choices. Maybe you're pursuing a career they don't approve of, or you're in a relationship they don't understand. In these cases, keeping certain aspects of your life private can help you avoid unnecessary conflict and stress. For example, if you know your parents are likely to criticize your dating choices, it's okay to limit what you share about your love life. You don't need to introduce every person you go on a date with to your family. Wait until a relationship becomes serious before involving your family. Privacy also allows you to process your own thoughts and feelings without external influence. If you're considering a major life change, like moving to a new city or changing careers, you might want to think it through on your own before seeking input from family members. Remember, privacy doesn't mean you're hiding something shameful. It's about creating a space for yourself where you can grow, make decisions, and live your life on your own terms. It's about protecting your peace and maintaining your individuality within the family structure. So next time you feel pressured to share everything with your family, remember that it's okay to keep some things to yourself. Your life is your own, and you get to decide what you share and what you keep private. Now let's talk about a topic that might ruffle a few feathers: the role of grandparents in family dynamics. We often hear about how grandparents are these wonderful, nurturing figures who shower their grandchildren with love and wisdom. And while this is true in many cases, it's not always the full picture. The reality is, grandparents aren't always the positive influence we expect them to be. Sometimes they can actually create more tension and stress within a family unit. For instance, some grandparents may have trouble respecting boundaries set by parents. They might insist on feeding the kids sugary treats right before bedtime, or undermine disciplinary decisions made by the parents. In other cases, grandparents might be overly critical of parenting styles that differ from their own. They might make comments like, "In my day, we didn't coddle children like this," or "You're too soft on them." This kind of criticism can create friction between parents and grandparents, and even cause self-doubt in new parents who are already navigating the challenges of raising children. There's also the issue of grandparents who play favorites among their grandchildren. This behavior can foster resentment and competition between siblings or cousins, potentially damaging these relationships in the long term. Sometimes grandparents might use their role to exert control over the family. They might use financial support as leverage, or guilt trip their children into spending more time with them at the expense of other commitments. It's important to recognize that, like any relationship, the grandparent-grandchild dynamic isn't automatically perfect. It requires work, boundaries, and mutual respect. If you're dealing with challenging grandparent situations, remember that it's okay to set firm boundaries and prioritize the well-being of your immediate family. Now let's talk about a topic that might hit close to home for many of us: varying levels of family closeness. It's a common belief that we should be equally close to all our family members, but the reality is often quite different. Think about your own family for a moment. Are you equally close to every single relative? Chances are you're not, and that's perfectly okay. The truth is, it's natural to have different levels of closeness with different family members. You might have a sibling you talk to every day, a cousin you only see at holidays, and an aunt you barely know. These varying degrees of closeness don't make you a bad person or a bad family member. Sometimes we simply click better with certain relatives. Maybe you share common interests with one uncle, while you struggle to find conversation topics with another. Perhaps you have a similar sense of humor to your grandma, but find it hard to relate to your grandpa. It's also important to remember that proximity and shared experiences play a big role in closeness. If you grew up living next door to your cousins, you're likely to be closer to them than to cousins who live across the country. Having surface-level relationships with some family members doesn't mean you don't care about them. It just means that your connection isn't as deep. You can still respect and value these relatives without feeling pressured to forge an intense bond. Accepting this reality can actually lead to healthier family dynamics. When we let go of the guilt or pressure to be equally close to everyone, we can focus on nurturing the relationships that naturally flourish while maintaining polite and respectful interactions with others. So, the next time you're at a family gathering and find yourself having mostly small talk with certain relatives, remember, it's okay. You're not alone, and it doesn't make you or your family any less valid. Let's talk about a truth that's often swept under the rug. Not all family members will naturally get along or even like each other. And you know what? That's completely normal. We're often fed this idealized image of family where everyone gets along perfectly, sharing inside jokes and having heartfelt conversations. But the reality is often quite different. Just because you share DNA or a last name doesn't mean you'll automatically click with every single relative. Think about it. Your family is essentially a group of people thrown together by chance. You didn't choose them, and they didn't choose you. It's unrealistic to expect that everyone in this random group will have compatible personalities, shared interests, or similar values. For instance, you might have an uncle whose political views are the polar opposite of yours, making every family gathering feel like a potential minefield. Or perhaps you have a cousin who's always been a bit of a bully, and you've never quite gotten over childhood tensions. These differences don't make you a bad person or a failure at family relationships. They're simply a reflection of the diverse tapestry that makes up most families. It's okay to acknowledge that you don't click with certain relatives. You don't have to force a close relationship where there isn't one naturally. The key is to find a balance. Treat everyone with basic respect and kindness, but don't feel guilty if you don't have a deep, meaningful relationship with every single family member. It's perfectly fine to have varying levels of closeness with different relatives. Remember, it's the quality of your relationships that matters, not the quantity. Focus on nurturing the family relationships that do bring you joy and support, and don't stress too much about the ones that don't naturally flourish. In the end, accepting this reality can actually lead to healthier family dynamics. When we let go of the pressure to be best friends with every relative, we open the door to more authentic, genuine interactions. And that's what family is really about, being true to ourselves while still showing love and respect to those we're connected to by blood or marriage. Let's tackle a tough but important topic: toxic parents. It's a subject that's often swept under the rug because, well, they're our parents. We're taught to respect and love them unconditionally. But the truth is, parents are human too, and some can exhibit harmful behaviors that negatively impact their children's lives. So, how do we recognize toxic parental behavior? Look out for constant criticism, emotional manipulation, or attempts to control your life decisions. A toxic parent might make you feel guilty for setting boundaries or living your life on your own terms. They might dismiss your feelings or constantly compare you unfavorably to others. One clear sign is if you consistently feel drained, anxious, or depressed after interacting with them. Healthy relationships should lift you up, not tear you down. Now, dealing with toxic parents is challenging. The first step is acknowledging the problem. It's okay to admit that your parent's behavior is harmful. This doesn't make you a bad child, it makes you honest. Next, set clear boundaries. This might mean limiting contact, refusing to discuss certain topics, or walking away from hurtful conversations. Remember, it's not your job to change them, but it is your responsibility to protect your own mental health. Seek support from friends, other family members, or a therapist. Having a support system is crucial when navigating these difficult waters. Ultimately, it's okay to distance yourself from toxic parents if that's what's best for your well-being. Society might pressure you to maintain close family ties, but your mental health should always come first. Remember, recognizing toxic behavior in your parents doesn't negate any love or good times you've shared. It's about acknowledging the full picture and making informed decisions about your relationship moving forward. Let's talk about holiday plans. We've all felt that pressure to spend every holiday with family, right? It's like an unwritten rule of society. But here's a thought. What if that's not the best choice for everyone? For some, family gatherings during holidays can be more stressful than celebratory. Maybe there's tension with certain relatives, or perhaps the whole affair just leaves you feeling drained rather than festive. If this sounds familiar, it might be time to consider some alternatives. First off, it's okay to spend holidays with friends instead of family. Your chosen family can be just as meaningful, if not more so. Imagine a Thanksgiving where everyone actually gets along, or a Christmas where you're not walking on eggshells. Sounds nice, doesn't it? Another option is to use holidays as a time for self-care. Take that trip you've always wanted, or simply enjoy a peaceful day at home. There's something liberating about waking up on a holiday morning with no obligations, no family drama to navigate. Some people find volunteering during holidays incredibly rewarding. Serving meals at a shelter or visiting a nursing home can bring a whole new meaning to the season. It's a great way to give back and gain perspective. Remember, choosing an alternative doesn't mean you don't love your family. It just means you're prioritizing your mental health and well-being, and who knows? Taking a break might even improve your family relationships in the long run. So this year, if the thought of another traditional family holiday fills you with dread rather than joy, give yourself permission to try something different. Your holidays should be a time of happiness and rejuvenation, not stress and obligation. It's your life, and that includes your holidays. Make them count in a way that's meaningful to you. Let's talk about an uncomfortable truth that many of us have experienced but rarely discuss: family jealousy. It's a common belief that our family members should be our biggest cheerleaders, celebrating our successes and achievements. But the reality can be quite different. Sometimes when we achieve something significant, whether it's a promotion at work, buying a new house, or even finding a loving relationship, we might notice a shift in how certain family members interact with us. They might make snide comments, downplay our accomplishments, or even try to sabotage our success. For example, imagine you've just landed your dream job. You're excited to share the news with your family, expecting congratulations and support. Instead, your uncle dismisses it, saying, "Oh, that company? I heard they're not doing well. You should be careful." Or your cousin suddenly becomes distant, making excuses not to meet up or talk. This behavior often stems from their own insecurities or unfulfilled dreams. They might see your success as a reflection of their own perceived failures. It's not about you, it's about their own internal struggles. Navigating these dynamics can be challenging. It's important to remember that you're not responsible for managing their emotions. Continue to celebrate your achievements, even if some family members can't genuinely share in your joy. Consider setting boundaries with family members who consistently diminish your successes. This might mean limiting the information you share with them or reducing the time you spend together. Surround yourself with people who truly support and celebrate you, whether they're family or not. Remember, your success is your own. You've worked hard for it, and you deserve to enjoy it fully. Don't let family jealousy dim your light or make you feel guilty for your achievements. Keep moving forward and focus on the positive relationships in your life that uplift and encourage you. Let's talk about the importance of making life choices independently of family approval. It's a tough topic, but one that many of us face at some point in our lives. We're often taught from a young age that we should seek our family's approval for major life decisions. But is that always the best approach? The truth is, your life is your own. While it's natural to want your family's support, their approval shouldn't be the deciding factor in your choices. Your decisions are valid even if your family disagrees with them. This could apply to career choices, relationships, where you live, or how you choose to spend your time. For instance, imagine you've always dreamed of becoming an artist, but your family insists that you should pursue a more stable career like law or medicine. It's easy to feel torn between your passion and your family's expectations. But remember, you're the one who has to live with the consequences of your choices. If you choose a career solely to please your family, you might end up feeling unfulfilled or resentful. Or consider a scenario where you're in a loving relationship, but your family disapproves because your partner doesn't meet their expectations. Maybe they're from a different cultural background, or they have a job your family doesn't respect. In these situations, it's crucial to trust your own judgment. You're the one in the relationship, not your family. It's also worth noting that family disapproval doesn't always stem from a place of malice. Often, it comes from a place of concern or from their own life experiences and biases. They might genuinely believe they know what's best for you, but the reality is they can't possibly know everything about your situation, your feelings, or your goals. Making independent choices doesn't mean you have to completely disregard your family's input. Their advice can still be valuable, and it's worth considering. But ultimately, the final decision should be yours. It's about finding a balance between respecting your family and respecting yourself. Remember, it's okay to forge your own path. Your life choices are an expression of who you are, and they should align with your values, goals, and happiness. Don't let the fear of family disapproval hold you back from living authentically. Let's talk about emotional boundaries in families. It's a topic that many of us struggle with, yet it's crucial for our mental health and well-being. We often hear that families should be there for each other no matter what, but this idea can sometimes lead to unhealthy dynamics and emotional burnout. Emotional labor within families can take many forms. It might be constantly mediating conflicts between other family members, being the go-to person for everyone's problems, or feeling responsible for managing others' emotions. While it's natural to want to support our loved ones, there's a fine line between being supportive and becoming everyone's emotional dumping ground. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't care about your family. It's about creating a healthy balance that allows you to maintain your own mental health while still being there for your loved ones. This might look like limiting the time you spend discussing certain topics, redirecting conversations when they become draining, or even suggesting professional help for ongoing issues. Remember, it's okay to say no to emotional demands that feel overwhelming. You're not obligated to be your family's therapist or to solve everyone's problems. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for both yourself and your family is to recognize when a situation is beyond your capacity to handle. Establishing these boundaries can be challenging, especially if your family isn't used to it. You might face resistance or guilt tripping at first, but stand firm. Explain that by taking care of your own emotional needs, you're actually becoming a better, more present family member in the long run. Ultimately, healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and understanding. By setting clear emotional boundaries, you're not pushing your family away. You're creating a more sustainable, balanced dynamic that benefits everyone involved. As we grow and evolve, it's natural for our relationships to change, including those with family members. While society often emphasizes the permanence of family bonds, the truth is that we can outgrow certain family relationships, just like we outgrow friendships or romantic partnerships. Think about how much you've changed since childhood. Your values, beliefs, and priorities have likely shifted dramatically. It's only logical that the dynamics of your family relationships would change too. What worked when you were younger might not fit who you are as an adult. For instance, you might have been close to a cousin during your teenage years, bonding over shared interests or experiences. But as you've grown older, your paths may have diverged. Perhaps you've pursued higher education while they chose a different route, or your political views have become increasingly polarized. These changes can create a distance that's hard to bridge. It's important to recognize that outgrowing a relationship doesn't mean you've failed or that you don't love that family member anymore. It simply means that your connection has evolved, and that's okay. Forcing yourself to maintain the same level of closeness can lead to frustration and resentment on both sides. Acknowledging this shift can be challenging, especially when faced with family expectations or pressure. You might feel guilty for not being as close to a sibling as you once were, or for dreading visits with a relative you used to enjoy spending time with. But remember, guilt doesn't serve anyone in the long run. Instead of clinging to outdated dynamics, it can be healthier to accept the change and adjust your expectations accordingly. This might mean less frequent communication, shorter visits, or focusing on neutral topics when you do interact. It's about finding a new balance that respects who you are now, while still maintaining a level of connection that feels authentic and comfortable for you. Remember, outgrowing certain family relationships doesn't diminish your entire family experience. It simply makes room for you to invest more energy in the relationships that do align with your current self, whether those are with other family members or with chosen family, close friends who share your values and support your growth. Family secrets can be a heavy burden, passed down through generations like an unwanted heirloom. While many families encourage silence around difficult topics or past mistakes, breaking the cycle of secrecy can often be the healthiest option for everyone involved. These secrets can range from minor indiscretions to serious issues like abuse, addiction, or hidden relationships. Regardless of their nature, they tend to create an atmosphere of tension and unspoken anxiety within the family unit. Consider the case of Sarah, who grew up sensing an underlying tension whenever her grandfather was mentioned. It wasn't until she was in her 30s that she discovered he had abandoned the family decades ago, leaving her grandmother to raise 3 children alone. The family had collectively decided to pretend he had died rather than face the painful truth. While the intention behind keeping secrets is often to protect family members from pain or embarrassment, the reality is that secrets can cause more harm than good. They create barriers between family members, foster distrust, and can even lead to mental health issues as individuals struggle with the weight of hidden truths. Breaking the cycle of secrecy isn't easy, but it can be incredibly liberating. It allows for honest conversations, healing, and the opportunity to build more authentic relationships. For instance, when Sarah finally broached the subject with her family, it led to tearful but cathartic discussions that ultimately brought them closer together. It's important to approach revealing family secrets with sensitivity and care. Sometimes professional help from a family therapist can be beneficial in navigating these difficult conversations. Remember, the goal isn't to cause pain or assign blame, but to foster understanding and promote healing. In the end, the truth, however uncomfortable, often proves less damaging than the web of lies and silence woven to conceal it. By choosing openness over secrecy, families can build stronger, more resilient bonds based on honesty and mutual support. As we grow older and start our own families, our priorities often shift. It's a natural progression that many people experience, yet it can be a source of guilt or conflict. Let's talk about why it's perfectly okay to prioritize your immediate family over your extended relatives. When you get married or have children, you're creating a new family unit. This unit becomes your primary focus, and that's how it should be. Your partner and children need your time, attention, and energy more than your extended family does. This doesn't mean you're abandoning your parents, siblings, or other relatives. It simply means you're adjusting your priorities to fit your new life circumstances. For example, you might find yourself spending Christmas morning at home with your kids instead of at your parents' house. Or you might choose to use your limited vacation time for a trip with your spouse rather than attending every family reunion. These choices don't make you a bad son, daughter, or sibling. They make you a good parent and partner. It's also important to remember that your immediate family relies on you in ways your extended family doesn't. Your children need your guidance and support as they grow. Your partner needs your emotional and practical support in building your life together. These needs often take precedence over the wants of extended family members. Of course, this doesn't mean completely cutting off your extended family. It's about finding a balance that works for you and your immediate family. You might schedule regular video calls with your parents instead of weekly visits, or plan one big family gathering a year instead of multiple smaller ones. Remember, prioritizing your immediate family isn't selfish. It's a necessary part of building and nurturing your own family unit. So, if you find yourself feeling guilty about not spending as much time with extended family, remind yourself that you're doing what's best for the family you've created. It's okay to put them first. As we wrap up our discussion on unpopular opinions about family, it's important to remember that these perspectives are meant to challenge conventional wisdom and encourage critical thinking about our family relationships. We've covered a wide range of topics, from recognizing that parents don't always know best to acknowledging that it's okay to prioritize your own family over extended relatives. Throughout this podcast, we've emphasized the importance of setting boundaries, maintaining your individuality, and making choices that align with your values and well-being. We've explored how family dynamics can be complex, sometimes toxic, and not always in line with societal expectations. Remember, it's okay to question family traditions, to have varying levels of closeness with different family members, and to prioritize your own emotional health. Your life choices don't require family approval, and it's perfectly acceptable to forge your own path, even if it differs from your parents' expectations. As you reflect on your own family dynamics, consider which of these perspectives resonate with you. Are there areas where you might benefit from setting clearer boundaries or reassessing your relationships? Remember, acknowledging these realities doesn't diminish the value of family, but rather encourages healthier, more authentic connections. And I hope this discussion has provided food for thought as you navigate your own family relationships. Hey there, soulful ambassadors. Today, we've been diving deep into the fascinating world of family dynamics, and let me tell you, it's been quite a ride. You know, it's funny how we can talk about family for hours on end and still barely scratch the surface. We've covered toxicity, unpopular opinions, and so much more, but there's still plenty of ground to cover. Don't worry, though. We'll be back with part 2 of our unpopular opinions about family after our Hey Soulful Riley segment. I've got to say, I've had a blast discussing family relationships and dynamics with you all. I know I might have ruffled a few feathers along the way, but hey, that's what we're here for, right? To challenge our perspectives and maybe even have an eye-opening moment or two. I bet some of you are feeling pretty grateful for the amazing family members you have in your life right now. And others? Well, you might be gearing up for that long overdue conversation about boundaries, or maybe even considering cutting ties with a toxic relative. No judgment here, folks. We've all got to do what's best for our mental health and well-being. This episode has been particularly close to my heart, and I hope it's resonated with you too. It's so important to appreciate the genuine support systems we have in our lives, whether they're blood relatives or chosen family. Now, before we wrap up, I want to give a massive shout out to all our incredible soulful ambassadors who like, comment, and engage with us. You guys rock! And to everyone tuning in, whether you're watching or listening, thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you've enjoyed this episode, and let's face it, how could you not? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, smash that like, and turn on those notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss out on any of our soulful goodness. Oh, and here's a little treat for you. We've got a sweet 25% discount on Beducated courses. Just head over to our Instagram handle at heartbeat_chronicles or my personal handle at _soulful_Riley to grab that deal. You can find the link in the description box or use the coupon code HEARTBEAT at checkout. And speaking of treats, have you checked out our merch store yet? We've got some seriously cool Heartbeat gear waiting for you. The link's in the description box and on our Instagram, so go ahead and treat yourself to some soulful swag. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media channels for even more engagement and behind-the-scenes fun. All right, soulful ambassadors, that's all for today. If you loved this episode, and I know you did, hit that notification bell so you never miss a beat. And hey, why not spread the love? Share this episode with your friends, family, or anyone who could use a little soulful loving in their life. Until next time, keep those hearts beating and those souls shining bright. In today's episode, we wrap up this emotional journey. I want to leave you with this thought. Family is important, but so are you. Your happiness, your mental health, your peace of mind. These are not optional extras. They're the foundation of a life well lived. So, my dear soulful ambassadors, go forth and set those boundaries. Love fiercely, but love wisely. And remember, if all else fails, you can always join my family. We're dysfunctional, but at least we have a sense of humor about it. As we close out this discussion on unpopular opinions about family relationships, let's reflect on the key points we've explored today. We've challenged the notion that family love must be unconditional and that blood ties should always take precedence. We've discussed the importance of setting boundaries, recognizing toxic behavior, and the validity of chosen families. Remember, prioritizing your well-being doesn't make you a bad person. It's okay to redefine what family means to you and to love from a distance when necessary. As you navigate your own family dynamics, consider how these ideas might apply to your life. Your mental health and happiness matter, and sometimes that means making difficult decisions about family relationships. Thank you for listening, and I hope this episode has given you food for thought about your own family experiences and expectations. Until next time, this is Riley Mitchell, reminding you that every heartbeat tells a story. Make sure yours is one you love. Keep those hearts beating strong, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Heartbeat Chronicles. And don't forget to hit that notification button so you never miss a beat.